To talk about Cleon Skousen. I met him, he's my hero, and I met him about 30 or more years ago when I married into the Bentley family, because Cleon Skousen's mom is a Bentley, and so every reunion that we'd go to, Cleon Skousen would be there. And I remember when he talked about Pancho Villa, and it was always fun to go hear Cleon Skousen talk, but besides that, my husband and I would go listen to Cleon Skousen when he had his classes, and he used to call it the Miracle of America before he changed it to the Making of America. And he'd have us fill out the little, he'd have a little space there to fill out the words. That was his favorite way of teaching. And I think we went to like 4 or 5 different classes, and I just loved going to hear Cleon Skousen. And about 2005, after the war had started, our family would talk about the war, and we just kind of wondered about it. We thought, is this a constitutional war? And my son Todd said, well, why don't we call Cleon Skousen and ask him what he thinks about the war? So we called him, and Richard was listening, talking to him while we had listened in on the phone. I think Brian was there too. And Cleon Skousen says, why don't you come to our house and I'll talk to you about the war? So we told a few of our family members to come, and we ended up with a bigger group than probably what he expected. But I think Todd filmed that, and he talked to us about what he thought about the war. And I don't really remember everything that he said about it, but to me it felt like it wasn't a constitutional war. And I don't mean to be controversial, but I won't say any more about that part. But after we were there, he mentioned that, well, every week I have meetings. You can come and come to my classes. So every week, Todd and Brian and me and Richard and I went to his meetings every Thursday or whatever day it was. And he had us each take turns reading a paragraph instead of him just reading it all, because he was getting older and more tired. So he had us each read a verse or a sentence. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, it was this book. I couldn't remember which book. I just remember the message that I got from Cleon Skousen, besides all the wonderful things that he says about the Founding Fathers and the Constitution. The biggest message that I got was that we can still be happy. He would stand up in front of everybody, and he would smile and make his jokes, and he just had such a good way about him to teach about the Constitution. And then there were other things he'd say, like I think you mentioned that tonight about, well, I read the book and I know how it ends. And I know that Christ wins in the end. And I heard him say that the other day. That was one of his favorite sayings, and that's the way I look at it. I think we have a battle here, and we are going to battle, and each of us have our different ways that we're going to fight this war, because we are on the battlefront. And we know that the Lord wins in the end, and we will win, even though we're going to go through a lot. And then on my way to his funeral, I was walking down the sidewalk. I wanted to mention, we hung out with Cleon Skousen just before he died. And what happened was, I guess he was trying to fix a clock, and he got up on a stool to fix it, and he fell. And he was sick ever since then, and he had one more meeting at his home after he had gotten injured. And I remember I was going down the back stairs. When you go back down the back stairs, you can look into the kitchen. And I looked over into the kitchen, and there was Cleon Skousen sitting at the table in his robe. And I was going to knock on the window and wave to him, but he looked down, and so I thought, oh, I won't disturb him. So I went down the stairs, and that's the last I had seen him here on this earth. And after we got to the funeral, I was with Karen Clark. She's in Eagle Forum, and she was saying, who's going to fill his shoes? And I said, it's not just one person. There's going to be a whole bunch of people that will fill his shoes. That's what Cleon Skousen wanted. He wanted to teach a lot of people so that we would go out and teach a lot of people. So every one of us here today are here, we can fill Cleon Skousen's shoes. We don't need just one person to fill his shoes. We can all take that effort in our fight for freedom and teach the many things that Cleon Skousen taught. And I'm just grateful that I got to learn under a spiritual giant, a constitutional giant, and a freedom lover. And that's all I have to say about that.